Who have the Oklahoma Sooners missed most in the 2024 season?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Thank you for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can get in on the action with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams, and today we're asking the question, who have the Oklahoma Sooners missed most? We're going to start with the offensive side of the ball, then we'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Jay, who have they missed most on offense in 2024?
Man, there's honestly so many players you could talk about because
We've
we've
missed
lost
so many people.
So many people. Yeah, I know Sooner fans, y'all hate that we continue to rehash these conversations about the injuries and stuff, but look, got to talk about something. And it makes sense to try to understand who really is going to be, who's a game changer for us and someone that really is that impactful. And honestly, John, for me, You may think it'd be an odd one for some, but I think it was Jalil Farouk. And I say that because even with all the problems we had at the offensive line, with all of the inconsistencies that we've seen, Jackson Arnold built a lot of rapport with Jalil Farouk, going from the BYU game when he changed the play and hit that game-sealing slant pass to the Arizona game where he was literally launching it to him on a regular basis. Unfortunately, we kept seeing fumbles from it, but he was launching it to him to get into the red zone consistently. To even when he came back against Missouri, he got him a ball thrown to him. He threw the deep pass against Temple, right, to start the season off, that 47-yarder. So you're like, oh, man, okay, we see a connection. And then, unfortunately, we've just seen injury after injury for Jalil. That was his safety blanket. We initially thought it was Drake Stoops in that Arizona game. But as the game progressed, Jalil was his guy. And Jalil may not be your wide receiver one on majority of rosters. But the one thing he is, John, Jalil is a game player. He's a playmaker. He does all of that. He's a gamer. That's probably the best way to say it, because he's going to go out there and do something. He's going to go out there and find a way to get open. He's going to be physical at the point of catch. He's going to go out there and block. That's something that you kind of need, and you don't usually get that out of a lot of the young guys, especially when it's all young guys. When you have veterans around, they learn it, but that's the one thing I think Jalil brought to the table that we are solely missing right now.
Yeah, Jalil Farouk has been a big absence. The Oklahoma Sooners relied on having that top five wide receivers, having somebody with the veteran experience that Jalil Farouk had, someone who's played with a number of different quarterbacks in the course of his career at Oklahoma and been successful. And he does so many different things for an offense. You mentioned the blocking ability, but he wins in every aspect of the passing game. You can run the screens with him. You can run him out into the intermediate or the deep part of the passing attack, and he can win for you. We saw it against Texas last year. He was one of Oklahoma's most impactful players in that Texas win a year ago. And I think that's something that you have sorely missed, is somebody that can make plays in a variety of different ways for you, because of his experience, because of his athleticism, because of his route running ability. And yeah, we look at some of his work and you say, okay, there's drops, there's turnovers. At the same time, there's a lot of big plays mixed into all that as well. And so we're not going to completely throw a player out just because of a small percentage of plays that are negative plays. He made so many good things happen for you in the passing game, in the offense. And I think he is Oklahoma's biggest miss. I could have pointed to a guy like Jaden Gibson, but I think Jalil Farouk is a bigger miss. You could point to a guy like Nick Anderson, but I think a guy like Jalil Farouk is a guy you've missed more because of that experience, and just you've lacked veteran leadership on the offense. I think that's been as big a problem as anything this season, whether it's the guys that have been injured or the guys that didn't come back. You just haven't had any leadership. And when guys are not practicing and they're not playing, it's hard to quote be a leader, because you're not grinding with the guys every single day. You're doing rehabilitation stuff. You're working in the trainer room. It's not the same thing. And so if you had Jalil Farouk for all 11 games this year, it helps the offense so much. The guy that I was looking at, and you could probably pick one of these two guys, but I think it's Jake Taylor. The fact that you've not had Jake Taylor really healthy at all this year, it's been a huge issue for you. Your offensive line has arguably been your biggest issue. If you can improve your blocking even just a skosh more, when you use a word my dad uses, a skosh, just a little bit more, I think it helps the offense be a lot more productive, a lot more consistent. And the fact that Jake Taylor was never really healthy all year, he played, he battled, he was playing injured, but he was never really healthy all year long. That hurt the Oklahoma Sooners offensive line. It made Michael Tarkin have to go from left tackle to right tackle and bounce back and forth constantly. Jacob Sexton to go from left guard to left tackle on a regular basis until you get to this point where you don't have anybody available anymore and you're having to play young guys and you're having to play guys deeper on the depth chart. If you had Jake Taylor available all year long and you could say, hey, there's my right tackle all year long with Fodje at right guard all year long, then it allows Michael Tarkin to stay on one side of the field. And it creates less of an issue of having to reshuffle your offensive line every single week.
Yeah, and that's the tough part. It's if you're constantly moving guys around, you're going to deal with these issues, and that's what we had to do. It wasn't because we wanted to. Bill Beatonbow had to, and and that's the one thing I try to explain to a few fans when we talked about this offensive line is that the problem has been the offensive line had to be moved around due to injuries and lack of experience. We've got a lot of young players, like a lot of young players. We talked about this before. 8 of our 15 deep, basically you're 3 deep on the offensive line. 8 of them are players that have 1 year or less of experience. So they're either true sophomores, a redshirt freshman, or true freshmen. And that's because attrition, not only with attrition and injuries, majority of our starters were all transfer guys, or actually all transfer guys, from Tarquin to Waywu, right? From Troy Everett to Branson Hickman, Spencer Brown. You had to bring in a bunch of transfers, Gary and Hatchett. You had to bring in a bunch of transfers to kind of help bring some experience. But then they've been injured. The only person that has not missed time has been Waywu. And he's been up and down. But I think that he has a long-term viability on this line. I think long-term he can get himself drafted being under Bill Beatonbow. This is his first year. So it takes about a year for players to do it. We saw that with Tyler Guyton. He came in, barely played for a year, came in the next year, boom, you see the dude gets drafted. Taylor has the size for it. At 6'6", over 310 pounds. He's got the size and the ability to play, but shoot, the entire season he's been dealing with this. Shoulder been messed up, and that kind of takes away from your ability to be effective. So, John, I think you're spot on with him. You have a healthy right side. Your left side with Ozeta, who has really stepped up a lot. I mean, hey, he's starting to get a little bit nastier, and it's funny. His mom makes the joke that he'll get there once he, gets a little facial hair. I mean, he's just turned 19, so you got babies out there. Once they actually really get a little bit more aggressive, they get more comfortable with being more aggressive. I think we'll see an increase and see a better line. But next season, I don't have as many concerns. We'll probably hit the portal really hard for linemen just to make sure that we don't deal with this again. But I do believe that the line will be dramatically different coming into next season because it'll be more experienced and healthier.
Well, you think about what they've got coming back. You got Fodje coming back. You got Heath Ozida, Troy Everett, 3 guys that have played a lot now on the interior. You're going to have Logan Howland come back, a guy that's gotten better each week. Then you're going to have your Eddie Pierre-Louis, Eugene Brooks, Daniel Akinkumi. You're going to have Josh Isosa, guys that have now been in the program for a year, helping you out. Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor will still be around. Hopefully they can get healthy and stay healthy. And then you've got this nice 2025 recruiting class. Fingers crossed it stays that way. Michael Fasusi and Ryan Fodje and Owen Hallenbeck and Darius Afalava. Like, that's a really nice group of offensive linemen that are coming into the program next year. So it's just stacking these classes together. And I can't remember who put out the article. It might have been On3 like a month or two ago, detailing the struggles with Oklahoma's offensive line and how honestly it might date back to the Lincoln Riley era. And I know Bill Beatonbow was there, but you're seeing a difference in how many offensive linemen that are being taken right now versus how many offensive linemen were being taken at the end of the Lincoln Riley era. Bill Beatonbow's building better depth. It's just taking some time. And yes, he was responsible for the offensive line recruiting then, but he can only do so much and offer so many scholarships as his head coach will allow at the same time.
Exactly. That was the difference maker. And I saw that article. I made a video on it as well when I went back and started digging into classes. I think the last class before Riley left, we took 15 players and we only had like 1 or 2 offensive linemen. And it sounded like the expectation was to start living in the portal a little bit more on that. And it's like, no, you got to develop internally. Luckily, Anton Harrison was a part of that. We did bring in like Wanye Morris. We did bring in, Tyler Guyton as a transfer. We brought in some.
Walter Rouse.
Mathieu,
Chris Murray.
Right.
There have been
some
wins in the portal.
There's been some wins. And Mathieu with Guyton coming in that first year, those were some wins. And the bad part about that is, and I think this is the one thing people don't catch, is when BV was hired, right? We finally got that hiring in mid-December. You still, the transfer portal window at that point was open and you had to go, scramble to get people. And you didn't get Mathieu until the spring portal. That's when we was able to evaluate what we actually needed to run the offense with Levy. Yeah, you didn't get all of that you would normally get if Brent Venables was hired in November. If he was in November, you probably would have had a better idea, him and Levy, idea of what they wanted to do, and could have attacked in December as well as in the spring. So a little bit behind. No excuse there, just as an organization, but at the same time, like you pointed out, if Bill Beatonbow could have gotten the guys he wanted day one and not worked with what the old regime wanted to run their offense, we've been in a different boat.
Yeah, if you have fewer scholarship limitations as you're trying to build your offensive line, perhaps I will say this, there were a couple offensive linemen that got recruited during the Riley era that were misses too. And not to rehash all that, it's a little bit all of it.
Yeah.
And the injury situation. So
exactly.
Now it's coming together. You're starting to see some of these young guys develop, and you got to see more development this next offseason. It's going to be a really critical offseason for everybody involved. Who we've been missing on the defensive side of the ball most, we'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that passionate football fans isn't just a hobby. It's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or the agonizing second overtime, or just bad losses that we've seen. But this is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. You know that what else gives me a bit of Sooner fan fuel this week? The moments when we get a Javante Barnes run or find out that he's healthy enough to play, or we get offensive linemen back in preparation for this Alabama game. Whatever it is, 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here and help you keep your fueling throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide.
Thanks again for listening to Locked On Sooners and making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Who have you been missing most on the defensive side of the ball, Jay?
Oh, man, John, when I look through it, first and foremost, we've been blessed that it hasn't been awful on the defensive side when it comes to injuries. We got a lot of people banged up, but luckily it's been banged up injuries where they can continue to play. But the loss of Kendall Dobie, to me, was probably the largest loss out there. I mean, there's other options, of course, like a Gentry Williams or such. We may talk about that, but really seeing Kendall go down, that changed the dynamic of that cheetah role and everything that happened in there. The good thing is we got Deshaun McCullough back, so he was able to fill in some of that capacity, but Kendall was a game changer, not only as a blitzer, and as a coverage guy. The dude could scheme. He understood the scheme. He would move dudes into the right spots. He was cerebral when it came to being out there in that spot. And the fact that he was small and mighty, defenses underestimate him. Then you'd see him go into the backfield and get tackles, kind of like we're seeing out of Eli Bowen today. Mm-hmm. Man, Dobie was probably, to me, the biggest loss on that defensive side because he helped change one side of the field all the time. Heck, I think that's why you saw the emergence of Robert Spears-Jennings. He could really go out there and kind of freelance as a free safety a lot more. Now he's kind of picking up some slack as the young players are playing, Samuel Mosigo, but again, with Deshaun McCullough back healthy, I think that helps a lot. But man, we miss Ndobie a lot. The defense, you could see a noticeable dip without him.
He was a playmaker in every sense of the word. In coverage, in the run game, as a blitzer. I mean, I don't know if anybody blitzes as well as Kendall Dolby on this team.
Oh, man, he's so good. And he loves it, too. That's my favorite part. He likes that more than interceptions. He prefers sacks.
Yeah, he just has such a great knack for it, a feel for when to time his blitz. You know, he was catching guys off guard because he was lining up in coverage and not moving up to the line of scrimmage and giving himself away. And so there's just a certain feel that he has for playing that cheetah position that, listen, he's going to be one of those guys you get back next year after he recovers from injury. Hopefully he comes back and he's 100% Kendall Dolby, because he is a dude that really helps to transform a defense. I mean, he's not going to be the guy that gets the headlines. He's not going to be the guy that is a first round draft pick or a top 15 pick on the defensive side of the ball, but he just does so many things for you on defense that makes your defense better. Another one of those guys for me, Gentry Williams, dude. Like, Gentry's so every time that he's played, he's been really, really good. And I think we've been saying this now for over a year and a half, that when he's on the field, he's one of your best players because he's such a good cover player. And he just plays with a tenacity and an aggressiveness similar. You mentioned Eli Bowen before, similar to Eli Bowen, someone who's not afraid to play the ball in the air, who does a really good job tracking it, keeps his eyes on the quarterback while maintaining good coverage, and then is willing to come up and play the run. That might be some of Gentry's shoulder issues, is his willingness to play the run. At the same time, it helps your defense so much when you have cornerbacks that are willing to come up and stick their nose in. That's why teams aren't necessarily very successful running screens against Oklahoma, is because they've got corners that are willing to come up and play the run. So that's a dude that you got to figure out a way to get the Winter Soldier arm and shoulder onto his body so that he can come back and play opposite of Eli Bowen next year. Because if you have Gentry Williams and Eli Bowen next year playing cornerback for you, I feel pretty good about it. I feel really good about that position moving forward. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy?
Yeah, that's going to be the question, is can we keep them healthy? And man, Gentry got to the point after last season, he was shutting down half the field. People were afraid to throw it to his side of the ball, and I love that. I mean, the initial interception against Quinn Ewers, and ever since that moment, teams were like, all right, should we test? No, we probably shouldn't test him. And they stopped. They went right back to Woody. They're like, no, we're gonna go pick on that guy. Because they didn't want to go with him because of the experience. And then when they went to the young guy and he started showing, they're like, oh, no, go back. So you're going to need that. You're going to want that. And I think Eli Bowen can provide a little bit of that. And as soon as like either Jacoby Johnson or Makari Vickers really gets the scheme down out there, they're going to be a threat. Same thing with Jeremiah Newcomb. You're going to start seeing some threats at the corner spot as well. But man, Gentry was a game changer. It's like him and Kendall really made it easier for the safeties to do other stuff, even the linebackers. Like I think back to even the Kendall piece. Robert Spears-Jennings was really good at, especially in the Tennessee game, when he was able to blitz and get that sack, that forced that fumble. Kendall had created a hurry on the opposite side of the lineup when he went after Nico. And so he forced a hurry and Nico had to get rid of it. And so Nico knows, okay, I need to watch for this dude come in my direction and see if he does a delayed blitz. And you're not paying attention to Spears-Jennings coming behind you at that point. Those are those type of players and those plays that you get, man. But now, like I said, with McCullough back, playing more linebacker, and they're using him more as an edge, he's able to help force that, even him and R. Mason Thomas. So I know that long-term we're fine, but John, I hope that Dolby comes back healthy. If he comes back healthy, man, I think it's a game changer for this defense.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot better. And you're getting a nice influx of defensive talent next year, especially at cornerback, where you're getting a Malik Hawkins and Cortland Guillory, 2 4-star guys that have high upside and big time prospects. I think they're really good players. And again, you add to that defensive backfield. And I consider the cheetah both a defensive back and a linebacker. So it's there. But yeah, you have Dolby, you have either him or Williams back for this season, and your defense is looking better than what it already is, which has been pretty good this year. It's just not been, I will say it's been good enough to win more games. At times, the coverage has let them down. You add two of those guys back that are really good cover players and are guys that'll make plays on the football. And again, it does help your defense. It was a big weekend in SEC action. What happened? What was our biggest takeaway? We'll discuss coming next here on Locked On Sooners.
You ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook? Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So there's bets out there you can take that can help you out. So the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need in one place to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So like with Tampa Bay Buccaneers playing this week, they were in a bye week, so you get to bet on Baker Mayfield. I'm a big Bucs fan, so make sure you go out there and you show love to them. But whenever you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. So just go to FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I love watching live sports. One of my favorite things I've ever done is go to a live basketball game. It was actually a Thunder game. It was on my wife and I's dating anniversary way back in the day. It was the first live basketball game I'd ever gone to. Even being a Dallas Mavericks fan, I got to go see a Thunder game first, which was super fun. It's like back and forth action. It's nonstop. Love the game, love the atmosphere, love the environment. There's always something going on. It's such an entertaining atmosphere. And if you're looking to get in to watch the Oklahoma City Thunder, there's a game against the Portland Trailblazers on Wednesday where you can get in for $1. You can get in for $1 to go watch that game. And the Oklahoma City Thunder are going to be a contender this year. You want to sit in the lower level? I'm seeing seats for $61 in the lower bowl. $50 over at Game Time, $37 over at Game Time. So go download the Game Time app. Again, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Get in on the action over at Game Time. What time is it?
Game time.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Jay, what stood out to you in SEC action this week?
Ooh, it's going to be a lot of controversy when it comes down to the SEC championship game and all of the late games. Georgia going out there and doing what they did to Tennessee at the second half of that game was big time. South Carolina with the game win. I think that's probably the one that makes me say, oh, that game-winning touchdown to close it out, losing in heartbreak. Sounds familiar, right? I wish Missouri was 6-4 instead of 7-3, but I digress. I won't
Had
cry.
Oklahoma scheduled, they might not be 6-4.
Actually, no, they wouldn't be at all. They would not. And that's the thing about it is when you look at the schedule comparisons, and shout out to us. We didn't get just like obliterated offensively against anybody besides Texas. We actually did really good until, yeah. But South Carolina is putting themselves in a position to compete for the rest of the season. They're definitely bowling. That's the one thing we're not concerned about with them. But man, they played a game at the end of that. It's that fourth quarter, man. Teams got to stop with these fourth quarters. What jumped out to you the most?
Well, let me just talk about this. I know nobody wants to hear about referees, officials, and game-changing penalties or non-calls, things like that. Nobody felt sorry for Oklahoma when Drake Stoops got absolutely mugged in the end zone by Oklahoma State. No. Nobody felt sorry for him, and nobody should. It's just the way it goes. But how much different are we viewing South Carolina right now as a playoff team if they're not getting called for an illegal blindside block on Garrett Nussmeier after a pick six? They lose that game by 3 against LSU after 2 penalties wiped off defensive touchdowns.
Yeah. They
just
be
absolutely brutal. South Carolina is a playoff team, if not for poor officiating like that.
Yeah. That is very true. When I looked at that, I was thinking about that as well after the game. I'm like, man, South Carolina really did get a raw deal in that LSU game. They win that. Oh man, yeah, they're fighting for they'll be 5-2. They're up there with Georgia and Tennessee for a chance to play an SEC championship against, but actually the winner between Texas and Texas A&M. That's who's going to go. The winner of that game is the one that's going to be going. And so, yeah, that is one that you have that opportunity for if you don't get bamboozled by the referee. So, yeah, South Carolina's been balling out, though. Shout out to Beamer, former Oklahoma coach, tight end coach. He's doing it there. I'm actually very happy for him, if anybody, that he could possibly get it done.
Yeah, I think Beamer Ball 2.0 isn't so much about special teams, but it's about an elite pass rush that he's helped create there in South Carolina. The Georgia-Tennessee thing, man, Tennessee, that loss to Arkansas might come back to haunt you because you get beat by 2 touchdowns against Georgia. You get shut out in the second half, and you're maybe looking at the outside looking in at the playoff right now.
Yeah, and and the way that their schedule shapes out, it's perfect. They're going to finish with 10 wins, most likely. They'll have UTEP, but I'm not going to say that they're going to definitely beat Vanderbilt because Diego Pavia, he's on a revenge tour right now, and he's trying to get another year eligibility. But, yeah, that game now has a lot more implications for the Vols. They need that win to get that 10th win of the season, which I expect. But being 10-2 is not going to get you in the playoffs now. Not with the way the conference is and how the conference has been up and down. I mean, you've got, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that are 8-2 in the SEC. That is bananas.
So this is going to be an interesting question for the committee to answer at some point. Is a loss to Arkansas worse than a loss to Kentucky? Is a close loss to Arkansas worse than a close loss to Kentucky? Because that's what they might be facing when it comes down to Ole Miss and Tennessee. Because Ole Miss has looked good. They've got the win over Georgia, but they also have the loss to Kentucky. Tennessee has looked good. They've got the win over Alabama, but they've got that loss to Arkansas that's hanging over their heads. So that's going to be kind of fascinating, actually.
I guess that is the question, is which one weighs more, the ugly loss or the big win? That's what's going to be the question. And then, of course, Alabama's got to continue streaking forward because they've got, which I still think it's weird that Alabama is still ranked above Tennessee. I still feel Tennessee should be above Alabama because they beat Alabama, even though Alabama lost to, they lost to Vanderbilt.
Hey, don't say it like that anymore. Don't say it like that anymore.
It's Vandy, man. I love Vanderbilt.
Kansas. It's not the same Kansas.
True, but everybody roots for Vanderbilt in the SEC just because they're Vanderbilt. And they don't really provide you. But they're looking like the James Franklin Vanderbilt of old. Clark Lee, shout out to him. But yeah, it's just a logjam with all of them right now.
The SEC is an absolute mess because any direction you go with it, team A beat team B, will beat team B, beat team C, and team C beat team A. It's just a mess. Like I don't know how they're going to parse through it. The tiebreaker situation is going to be an absolute mess. The only 2 teams that provide any kind of clarity right now are Texas and Texas A&M, but that's going to change here in a couple of weeks when they play in College Station. But we'll touch on Texas before we get out of here. I thought they looked really solid against Arkansas. A great win, not by any stretch of the imagination, but a solid win on the road. They took the ball back from Arkansas after a fumble with a little over 6 minutes left to play, and they ran out the entire rest of the clock. That was, to me, maybe the most impressive drive that Texas has had all season.
Yeah, being able that one, and then I think they did something similar against Vanderbilt because that's what Vanderbilt does. That's how they beat you. Mm-hmm. They keep the ball in their hands, and they just burn clock by moving the chains constantly. And that's what they did in order to close that game. 14 plays, 43 yards. That's all they had was 43 yards, but that's all they needed. The goal was to burn the clock. Keep getting first downs. Take your time. They had it for 6 minutes and 55 seconds. That's how they ended the game.
Crazy.
Fumble recovery, 6 minutes, 55-second possession. That is very impressive. And that's exactly what you want if you want to win these big games. And so, yeah, for them, they got to beat A&M, though. They got to end the season with a win against Kentucky and a win against A&M if they want to see the SEC championship game. Because if they lose to A&M, Georgia will be the one that goes, guaranteed, because Georgia beat them. And so they're going to be the one that's going to be able to jump them and go right into the SEC championship game. So the expectation right now is Texas has to win out, and they'll go. If they don't, like I said, it'll be A&M playing against Georgia, because I don't see anybody on Georgia's schedule that makes me think that they have a chance of losing, because they wrap it up. Honestly, a little pretty cake schedule going forward.
I asked this question with our Locked On SEC brethren in the text chat. Does Texas have to win out in order to make the playoff?
Yeah.
It kind of feels that way. I mean, strength of schedule is going to be a real discussion here, but a 2-loss Texas team doesn't look as good to me as a 2-loss Tennessee team or a 2-loss Alabama team, a 2-loss Ole Miss team. It just doesn't look the same. And with the way the Big Ten has gone this year, with Oregon and Ohio State and Penn State and Indiana, I mean, if any conference has a say or has a stake to claim 4 teams should get in, it might be the Big Ten this year. The SEC just isn't. I mean, they're beating up on each other, and that's part of it. At the same time, you're losing games you shouldn't lose. Alabama losing to Vandy, Georgia losing. Oh man, who did they lose to? They should have lost to. They lost to Ole Miss. I felt like there was another
and
one
Alabama.
There. Okay, so maybe they're fine. They lost to 2 good teams, but Tennessee losing to Arkansas, Ole Miss losing to Kentucky. Those are not games you should lose if you're a contender. So the SEC kind of shot itself in the foot a little bit with some of those losses, but I think Georgia could be safe, and that might be about it. Alabama's streaking. I think they're going to look to make a statement against Oklahoma on the road in prime time, which I'm not looking forward to.
They have to make a statement against Oklahoma in the prime time. Even with the faults of Oklahoma, they're not going up against a team that they know is not going to lay down. The defense has been fine. It hasn't been perfect, but it's done a lot. It falls apart late, and that's kind of my expectation too when we come to the game. So we'll get more predictions later on that. But yes, Bama has to make a statement this weekend if they want to be considered in the playoff race.
And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Also go check out his channel, Unfair Sports. Follow me at John 9 Williams, and you can check out my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll catch you then. Boomer.
Sooner.